Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Genuinely Interested podcast with your host, Roy Bensby. This week, I have Fredrik Granath, who is a photographer and a photographer that mostly focuses on the Arctic. I guess he doesn't see himself as a photographer, but he works as a photographer and works with photographers, mainly his partner in life, crime and all, photographer Melissa Schäfer. And as a couple, they focus on mainly the Arctic region and mainly on polar bears and climate change, which is something that is, other than COVID-19, I don't see a more pressing issue than climate change. Obviously, it's not as swift and fast, but the implications are far and wide what could happen from climate change and what probably inevitably will happen. So it's just not as fast as COVID-19. But make no mistake, climate change is one of the most serious and pressing issues of our time. And it's something that will definitely hit hard in the next couple of decades. And unfortunately, some of the countries that are least equipped to deal with it will probably be hit the hardest. So hopefully this pandemic wakes us up a little bit to the realities of the natural world and what could happen, and maybe we'll be better protectors of the environment going forward. So I had a really good time with Fredrik. I think we see a lot of things alike. I'm an amateur photographer. It's something I enjoy doing, but his images, or him and Melissa's images, are very compelling. And they hope, and I hope as well, that the story comes through, the story that they're trying to tell. And I believe it does. So, we had a great chat about what it's like being in the polar regions, hostile environment, minus 50 Celsius at times, what it's like to see a polar bear up close, the kind of feeling you get from seeing just such an amazing animal, such a close distance. Obviously, climate change, and a little bit about what it's like in Sweden right now, how their approach was a little bit different than what's going on. And yeah, just generally just had a really good, honest conversation, which is something that I think is very particular to these YouTube videos, audio podcasts, just these long form conversations that you can have where you're really maybe not getting from conventional or traditional media, just because of budget and time constraints and what you're allowed and not allowed to say. So here you can talk about anything and bring on people that really have something to say with no political affiliations, with no political agenda. Just, I guess, spitting truth is one way to say it. So I had a lot of fun. I'm going to keep on bringing different types of guests with different worldviews and different experiences. And, I really enjoyed talking to people from all walks of life. So I'm, going to keep putting out 2 episodes every week. So I hope you enjoy them. And without further ado, here is Fredrik Granath. Hey, Fredrik, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. Thanks for coming on the show. Do you prefer Fred or Fredrik?
Either way, whatever you're comfortable with. Fred is fine.
Yeah, Fred. Okay. I feel like, we tend to make names shorter as we get to know people more. Like you start out with like Thomas, and then like after 2 years, it'll be Tom, and then like Fredrik, and then after a year, it'll be Fred.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah.
I rarely hear my name around here though, because we spend, me and Melissa, my partner, spend most of the time, just the two of us, and she just calls me Bubba. So
I won't call you that. All right. Okay. Fred. I think Fred's good. Yeah.
Fred is fine.
Cool. So yeah, if maybe you can tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, what you and Melissa do.
Yeah. Well, we work in the Arctic with a focus on the life of the polar bear. And of course, what is happening up there with climate change, where the polar bear plays a very central part. And then, from there, how what is happening in the Arctic actually affects us all. So the bottom line of everything is, I guess you could say, our connection to nature and to what is important in life. But we're doing it by telling the story of the polar bear. So I've been working up there since year 2000. So it's basically 20 years. And from the beginning, I don't know, I came there to Svalbard, Spitsbergen, kind of out of curiosity. I had heard about it from a friend had been there and told me about the ice and the polar bears and everything. And back then I worked with advertising and design. So I basically designed books and CDs and things for other people as a freelancer. So I came up there sort of on a long weekend trip just to check it out. And I fell in love immediately. And just, after a minute after stepping out of the airport, I just knew that part of the world would be a big part of me forever. I didn't know how back then, but I just felt, all the way into my soul, or whatever, that it was something huge was happening with me. So that's how it started. And then I saw that back then there was no, in my opinion, like beautiful book of photography made about that region. So that was what I first set out to do. Try to make a book about the world of ice, basically how beautiful it was. All the mountains and fjords and the glaciers and the sea ice and everything. So that's how it started. And I went out it started with a short summer hike. I was completely inexperienced, shit scared of polar bears. I didn't want to see them. So I had I think a $20, tent from the cheap sports store, silver colored, by the way. It blew to pieces the first night.
I would imagine.
So that's how it started. And then the short hikes became longer, and the trips turned into expeditions. And through the years, I also got closer and closer to the polar bear. And one year, I think I spent 10 months out of 12 in the field. So I spent a lot of time up there. And
that's in Svalbard, right?
Yeah, Svalbard, correct. Okay. And then in 2008, the first book was ready, called Vanishing World, which I did with another photographer, which was a huge success, published in 10 languages, I think. And lots of, media praise, and it was a huge success.
So you work with other but you're a photographer as well, right? But I know like your partner Melissa, she's a photographer, and you're saying you worked with a photographer on the first book as well.
Correct.
So it's kind of like
I'm not really I love photography. I do take photos, but I wouldn't call myself a photographer. As we work now, Melissa Schäfer, my partner in life, love, crime, and work, she is the photographer, and I carry her stuff basically, and do some more. I'm the assistant. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the thing also, working in a region like this under those conditions, there is, a million things to think of and to plan and to do.
Yeah.
before you actually are in the position where you can take a photo. So if you have a photo of a polar bear walking towards you in the sunset, coming to that position, to that point, to that moment, it's a result of months of planning and also years of experience often to be able to actually be there in a safe way. So there's a lot, around. It's not just taking the photo. So that's what I like to do. I like to plan and build projects like this new book that we have. That's what I like to do, and work on the, why are we doing this and how are we, going to reach out with the message that we want people to hear, which is the message from the polar bear, what the polar bear has to tell us. That's what we're trying to figure out. And the photos is, a tool to do that.
Yeah.
So we're not there to, just take pretty photos of sunsets and polar bears and ice. It's about the message. It's about storytelling. Storytelling can change the world. A single great photograph can, maybe not change the world. You need the message. You need a story to reach people.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of great single photos that I can think of that, just there was a moment in time and they really defined an era or changed, people's perception. So photographers throughout, I don't know, I guess at least last 100 years or so have really been pivotal, I think, in doing that. And I do want to get to like all the polar bears and the logistics and all that stuff, but I want to, talk a little bit more about you in the beginning. So you said, or maybe I don't remember if you said or I read about you, but you were originally an ad man. And then you came to Svalbard and that click just happened where you were like, I want to make that change.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I grew up, when I was a kid, I spent a lot of time in nature. I had a strong connection to it, much thanks to my mom who dragged me out there, picking blueberries and stuff. And I hated it at times, but it put something inside me, nature, a very strong and deep connection and love for nature. And then I lost it for a bunch of years, working with, advertising and design. And it was, I lived in New York actually a couple of years, Paris, Amsterdam.
Oh, really?
It was well, for some time, I would say I lived a pretty bad life, late nights and a lot of stuff that's not good for you.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Sure. Yeah. So I had that. So I lost the connection to nature. And I think when I came back to when I came to Svalbard the first time, I felt that just, kind of rushing over me again. And as I stepped out of the airport, the mountains and the fjord, everything was so big. Even the sky was bigger than at home. It was like landing on another planet, like landing on the moon or something.
Yeah.
It was, spectacular. But that was a long time ago. And now that part of the world is a huge part of me and us and what we do. It's our office, basically.
It's not a bad office to have, man. Do you think the cold
No.
is part of the thrill? Or because a lot of people, they love, because I think anybody that would see the images or go to places like anywhere in the Arctic, doesn't matter, Iceland, Svalbard, places in Canada, Alaska, etc. It's so beautiful, right? It's so vast and desolate. There's also not a lot of people and, animals that you wouldn't see anywhere else, etc. But the cold, like you would just, people just don't like cold. So is the cold like something that, you say to yourself, all right, this is just something I have to endure in order to enjoy the beauty? Or is it part of the thrill that you enjoy being in such cold, extreme regions?
It's a very good question, actually. I don't love the cold itself. No, I don't. Not really. It's a constant struggle, especially when it's really, really cold during February, March, April, and you have to struggle. And sometimes, it's freezing cold, and then you get this wind in your face, and it gets so cold you start screaming almost. You start crying.
Imagine.
So no, I don't love it. I don't love the cold itself, but it's something you have to work with all the time. It's I don't know. It's the big picture, I guess. The whole world up there, everything. The cold is a part of it. So I don't have a good answer for that. Actually, I don't love the cold itself. Really.
Yeah, you deal with it. You manage it.
Yeah, I manage it. We manage it mostly.
Yeah. You're not Wim Hof, where you're just sitting out in boxers out in in
no,
the
and I'm not an adventure guy. I wouldn't want to ski to the North Pole or climb the highest mountain. I don't see really the thrill of doing that when you just do it to have done it. With all respect to the great, North Pole skiers and everything. I love many of them.
Yeah.
But I'm not that guy. For me, it's more what we see during this trip, what we can document. Not the expedition, adventure, climbing mountains or reaching the pole. That's not really my thing. Someone said, that the adventure is what happens when you planned your expedition badly. There's some truth to that.
Yeah. What do you think the coldest that you've ever been in?
Well, I had one, I think like a 3-week expedition on one of the smaller islands, eastern part of Svalbard, and it was somewhere Celsius then minus 45, 50 for the entire trip.
Ooh, that's cold.
Yeah, that was cold.
Yeah,
that was really cold.
That's like Siberia. That's Siberia cold. That's
Siberia cold. That's true. Yeah.
Minus 50. But does the photography gear even work in that type of weather?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
You need to take care of batteries. That's all.
Yeah.
Usually when we go out there, we stay on Svalbard. Around Svalbard, you have these old trapper cabins. They're super small. There's like a bunk bed and a table. That's it. And there's space for one person to stand up at a time. And these were built by polar bear hunters, most of them, around 100 years ago, 1920, 1930. And they're being upheld by the governor, by the state up there. They go around the islands every year to check that everything is in good condition. Because quite often these are, a polar bear goes through the wall or falls through the roof. So we stay in those out there.
Very cool. So you mentioned earlier that you guys lead expeditions in the Arctic. Can you tell us a little bit about those expeditions? Mostly photography expeditions, correct?
Right. Yes. We every winter, every spring, we charter a Swedish ship called Freja, where we take guests with us, and it's an awesome way to see this world of ice, and usually encounter a bunch of beautiful polar bears and other wildlife. it's kind of an action version of a long winter expedition, because with a ship we can cover quite a big area, like go all around the islands and see a lot of amazing things. And we have what I think might be the best expedition ship that I know of. It's an awesome trip. And we do it 2-3 times every year. This year, of course, we had 2 expeditions. Yeah, check our website. Actually, all trips are sold out. No, we have a few spots actually, but
for next year probably, right?
Yeah, for next year, yes.
Yeah.
We did have 2 trips now this year, but of course had to cancel them because of this evil virus.
Yeah, it's stopped the whole world. I mean, I see in Sweden they're tackling it a little bit differently than the rest of the world. It's more focused on herd immunity, and I see pictures and it looks like coffee shops are open and people are sitting together, and I think the whole world's like scratching their head, what's going on? Like here, because here in the US, everyone's indoors, everyone's closed. At least for the most part, you're trying to keep your distance, and masks are everywhere, and the economy is crashing, and unemployment's up, et cetera, et cetera. But it seems like there's a few countries like Sweden that have, I'm not sure what the stats are as far as confirmed cases and deaths, but it looks like it's relatively lower than a lot of other countries.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Sweden is, first of all, who is doing it the right way, we will not know until afterwards. They media compares all the different countries and the death rates and so on now, but I think it's in a year or 2 years when we can see who did it the best way. And it's not a contest either. We're all in this together. So, but Sweden has, we have a lot of friends around Europe and also, of course, in the US and New York and so on. And like in Italy and Spain, you have military in the streets, and you're only, they're opening up now, but you're only allowed out to go shop for groceries, and you could be stopped by the police and they check that you have the receipt that you actually went to the store. Otherwise, you need to stay at home. And of course, that is a way of stopping the spread of the virus, but it also means that you completely stop the economy from working, and people get unemployed, businesses go bankrupt. And I guess that you can only shut down a country like that for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 months, because after that everyone goes bankrupt, and then you have problems bigger than the virus. So what I think Sweden has been doing from the start is what all the other countries will have to do now that they open up. Because now when they start opening up again and removing restrictions and so on, the virus is still there. It hasn't gone away. It will not go away until we have a vaccine, which could be another year. So the question now is when, Germany and Italy and Spain and Norway, they start opening up, they open the schools, people go back to work. What happens now? That's the big question, because the virus is still out there.
It's so we're talking about a second wave.
Yeah. There's so much we don't know, and I was talking to a friend yesterday about the trip we were supposed to go to Svalbard. Actually, we went to Svalbard. We flew up first week of March. And that's just, what is it? It's like 7 weeks ago, I think, 6 weeks ago even. And we flew up to Svalbard, and we were happy. We were looking forward to a long winter, going out with our ship, going out on expeditions, and work with our polar bears. And that was just 6 weeks ago, but it feels like a year ago. Everything has happened so fast. So, the question is, that was 6 weeks ago. The question then is, what does it look like in 6 weeks from now? Maybe it starts looking better at the same speed as it's, looked that took us to this point, because now it feels like we're kind of at the top of the pile of shit, pardon my French, of this virus,
okay.
with all the deaths and all the bad things that are happening. But
yeah, I mean, I'm in the US, so it's the worst here.
Yeah.
And we, I think on the one hand, they're trying to be a little bit more lax with some of the restrictions that they're putting forth. So they're starting to let people go back, or they're talking about potentially getting people back in the workforce. Again, it depends on the state, but overall, I think mid-May, and that could potentially work. But then I guess we'll have to see what happens, with the second wave come October, November, which they're talking about. Maybe they're going to have some contingency plans where people are going out for a few months and then bringing them back in, or if you're in a certain risk group, you should go back. I don't know if they have. I mean, look, I don't trust, not that I don't trust, this particular government hasn't been great. So I don't know what they will do come November. It doesn't look like they've had a plan so far. So I don't know if they'll have a contingency plan so far into the future. It's a lot of speculation, but I think the only one so far that has been, that something good has come of it, if you can even say that, has been the planet. It looks like carbon emissions have gone down, pollution has gone down, animals look like they're coming back, and you're seeing them in places that we've never, or that we haven't seen them in, decades. So in that sense, it's almost been like a reset button for the planet,
Absolutely. And yeah, it is. I mean, there are so many aspects to this, apart from the virus itself, and that we have to stay at home, and that people are dying. But, this comes from nature, and we cannot really control it. And maybe that will, help people understand that we cannot just go on and, do things without thinking about consequences. We are not the kings or queens of this planet, because nature is. And nature can fuck us up anytime it wants to. So we better be nice to it, I hope that could be a result of all this. But anyway, as far as the virus goes,
it could go either way.
It can. Exactly. I know. I'm thinking the same, because now the economy is down, people are unemployed. So once, if you listen to your wonderful president, I'm guessing that once you can restart all this, it's going to be, floor it and just, burn all the oil and coal you can, and let's make all the money we lost and more as fast as possible. That's the risk, of course.
Yeah.
But I hope not. We'll see. You also have an election. So
yeah. That's I don't want to get too much into politics. That's always a slippery slope.
Sure. But it goes for it's not just the US. This goes for all countries, I think. And we all have politicians who want to win the next election, and the danger of politics, of course, is the short-sightedness. That they're kind of short-sighted, most of them.
100%. There's no incentive for them to think 10 or 20 years into the future, because the election is only 3 or 4 years from now. So a lot of them, unfortunately, are. Yeah,
exactly. And, lots of people, what they look at is, their wallet. And do I have a job? Do I make money? Do I make good money? Do I make more money than last year? Then if yes, then, well, the president or the prime minister or party or whatever, they're doing a good job. So maybe I let them stay. That's this thing about being short-sighted. That's the big danger to everything here. And it's not just politics, it's also the big corporations, the business leaders. All they care about is the quarterly results and keeping their job and making a big profit this year and next year. But what it looks like in 5 or 10 years, that's maybe what we should care more about.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there as well, where they're almost saying that if you can't have a quote unquote green economy and still be profitable. So you have to be, bad for the environment. Doesn't matter in what industry you are, and that's the only way to be profitable. And all these people that are talking about green, renewable energy and green jobs and being sustainable, they're going to collapse the economy, and it's not possible. And I think I don't think, like, if you look at, any economy, a lot of economists and a lot of people in the renewable and energy industry, they will tell you we can do both, and we can actually create more jobs because it's new jobs, right? Green jobs are new jobs. So it's an emerging industry, and therefore you can create this new industry with a lot of economic boom behind it. But people are set in, it's almost like there's camps, right? And people want to stay in their camps. They don't want to say, oh, the other camp is right, because if they're right about one thing, maybe they could be right about a lot of other things. And then who am I politically? It's just, there's so much, like, it's one of those things where you pull one string and then the whole thing comes apart. So I think people don't want to listen a lot of times because it goes against what their camps believe in. And that's the whole ideological problem.
Absolutely. And also turning for a lot of big businesses, turning in a green way might cost a little in the beginning, but I think in the end they will have to go that way.
100% have to go. All right. So I back to what you guys do in the Arctic. When you look at some of the pictures that you guys post, and I've seen this obviously from other people that shoot in these Arctic regions. They're just so amazing. You got like these reds, blues, purples, oranges, violets, like all these crazy colors. I mean, dude, when you're there again, like I don't know how it looks when you're there, and I'm sure a lot of times in the photos maybe it comes out a little different. But
not really.
No.
I mean, we try to stick to, keep it as real as we possibly can. Some colors are difficult, capturing, but yes, I mean, these crazy colors that you see in some photos are mostly from the period when the midwinter. Because if we talk Svalbard specifically, then you have the polar night for about 4 months, from October to February, when the sun is under the horizon nonstop, 24/7. And the only sources of light are this the moon and the stars and the northern lights. But then the sun starts to return, and it slowly, seeks its way over the horizon in end of February. And then you have February, March, and from middle of April, you have the midnight sun. So then the sun never sets during all summer. But this time between the polar night and the midnight sun, which is basically from end of all of March, basically. Then you have these insane colors during sunset and sunrise, dusk and dawn. And sometimes when you're out there, you have to pinch yourself. Really, I do it literally. I pinch myself to check if it's real.
Wake up!
Yeah, it's you're walking around some weird dream. It's sometimes it's really crazy. And then sitting at home months later, going through all the photos, and you have to really check if the exposure and things are right. Did it really look like this? But it did.
Because it almost looks fake sometimes, right?
Yeah, I know. It does. But for sure, no. No, that's what we're doing. It's important to us to stick to what it actually looks like. I mean, with Photoshop and Lightroom and things, you can do anything these days.
Yeah.
But it's important to actually document it the way it is. That's what we're doing. We're telling people about that world, and then it's very important to stick to the truth and we're not out to make Kodak moments or pretty postcards. That's not what we're doing. But yeah, it's an insane world and scenery, especially during midwinter. It's beautiful, sure.
How hard is it to sleep in the summertime if it's 24 hours, not 24 hours of sun?
Yeah,
that must fuck up your whole, your whole inner clock.
It does. It does. It really does. I have a problem with it, even when I spend a lot of time there during the summer. If we're there for months, I never really get into it completely. I mean, you black out wherever you sleep. You try to black it out completely, but still, it's weird. Then I prefer the polar night, actually, when you have like constant night. I very much prefer that.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Because also the polar night is not pitch black. You have the stars, you have the moon, you have the northern lights. It's and even if the sun is under the horizon, you get some kind of light from the sun. And actually, some when it's really cold up there, you have like ice crystals in the atmosphere. And then the sun can shine on these from under the horizon. It can spread light to these ice particles in the atmosphere, and the whole sky turns like purple. It's weird,
like a fantasy.
It's like a fantasy.
Yeah. It's like one of those hallucinogens that you take and you start seeing everything in these weird colors and everything. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But
no, it's beautiful.
mean, why? So first of all, the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis, is like my number one bucket list thing to do. That's been, I think, since I was such a very small kid. Must have been 7 or 8. I think I saw it somewhere for the first time, and I've always wanted to see it. And for some reason, I just, till this day, I haven't had a chance to. I haven't been in the right place in the right time of year, and I just haven't had the luck to see it. So that's like number one before anything else. Like that's something I wanna see in the next like year or two. Have to see it.
Yeah.
But as far as polar bears, what originally got you, like, why specifically polar bears? I think a lot of people tend to care because we have millions of animals, but we tend to care about, I don't know if it's facial features, that maybe some animals are cute, or some animals inspire some sort of awe in us, like a lion or a bear or a fox. There's certain animals that we just look at and we're like, wow, this animal is so majestic or so strong or so beautiful that we're just drawn to them. Like, what do you think it's about polar bears that kind of drew you to them?
Well, the power of it, the beauty of it, how extremely intelligent it is, and how perfectly adapted it is to, perhaps the most extreme environment we have on this planet. How this animal needs this extreme place to survive, and also at the same time how the polar bear is like the biggest, most powerful, most to humans most dangerous land-living predator, but at the same time it's so fragile and so vulnerable. That fascinates me. But then also, as I got closer and closer to this magnificent creature, I got more and more fascinated with the presence of it. When you When you stand in front of a polar bear and he stares you in the eye, it feels like he can read your thoughts and smell what's going on inside your head. It's impossible to describe it. It's such a beautiful, magnificent, amazing, and powerful creature. That's, I think, what fascinates me on a personal level. And then, of course, the polar bear is the greatest spokesperson for what is happening with our climate. Because by looking at, the life of the polar bear and what happens with the polar bear, we can actually see our own future in a way. The ice is melting. Also, the Arctic itself is a great way of telling people in an easy to understand way what is happening when ice turns to water. A 5-year-old understands that.
You would be surprised at some people here in the U.S. that don't understand that.
No,
full adults that just don't comprehend that. But we'll leave that for later. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's that, and the Arctic is, of course, an easy and good way of showing what is happening with climate change, and also the Arctic is where you see it the most clear. Obviously, when ice turns to water, it happens first in the Arctic. It happens at a higher rate also. And the next thing is that what happens in the Arctic will not stay in the Arctic. It will affect us all. Yeah. Because the Arctic and the ice are two poles. The ice and the snow, they work as our planet's sort of air conditioner or fridge. Because when you have this ice and snow, it reflects the rays of the sun back into space. But when the ice and the snow melts, then the dark ocean or the ground free of snow, it absorbs the sun instead. So the more it melts, the faster it melts. Basically.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this a little later, but since we kind of brought it up, what would you say to people that think, and again, there's a good contingency of people, a good percentage that do think that climate change, it's not real, it's a hoax.
Well, there are. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's. It's like trying to argue with someone who says that Earth is flat.
Yeah.
And there is like the Earth is flat society with thousands of members. I don't really know what to say. Google it. Because it's so stupid. I'm sorry. It's because
it is.
It really is. Climate change is a fact. It's real. Yeah. It's not a political opinion. It's a fact. And the fact also that we are a big part of the cause for this, how we live and what we do. We're a huge part of it. That is also a fact. It's not a political opinion. And burning fossil fuels, oil and coal, for example, is a huge part of it. That's also a fact.
Eating meat,
and anyone who sorry.
Eating meat is a huge factor as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The food consumption, absolutely. Yes, so there are many parts of it, and we, by our way of life, we cause climate change. That's a fact, and we know how to stop this or make it better. We know the problems and we know the solutions. It should be quite easy. The problem, though, is money and greedy, short-sighted politicians and big corporations. The good news, though, is that we own the politicians. We own these huge companies. We vote in elections and we vote with our wallets when we go to the store. When you go to the store, you can pick, the the big red steak, or you can get a salad. That sounds very boring, but everything. Every time you buy something, you actually approve of the product and the company who made the product and how it was produced. So going to the store and buying stuff, if it's an apple in a store or if it's a new car, no matter what you buy, if it's big or small, you vote. So we do have that power, and also, of course, in elections. So, yeah, I
that's
can
why
say.
I think. No, I was just going to say that I think, to your point, that I put less emphasis on government and large corporations, because I think at the end of the day, they will go where the money is, right? So that's why I feel like it's better to put emphasis on educating individuals, because if you as an individual decide to buy a Tesla instead of oil guzzling SUV or whatever car it is that uses oil, and if you as an individual go to the supermarket and you buy meat alternatives rather than a steak or pork or whatever meat that you eat, and if you as an individual don't use plastic bags and recycle plastic and use less plastic and consume on average less than you did last year, I think that's something that no politician in a democratic country and no corporation will ever tell you to do. They're just not going to tell you, hey, consume less. Hey, throw away less. It's not going to happen, because that's what sustains economies. So I think it's educating individuals and telling them, hey, no one else is going to tell you this. So these are the steps that you should take in order to have a better future for yourself, for your kids, for the planet, animals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's basically, I think it's about starting to look at this planet as our home, to really feel that connection. We say sometimes that if you're at home and you drop something on the floor at home, like a coffee or something, do you clean that up? Of course you do. And if your house or your apartment would be on fire, would you try to stop that fire? Would you call the fire department? Of course you would. And this planet, what we have outside our house, that is our home, and we don't have anywhere else to go. So let's take care of it. And I think it's about finding this connection, to reconnect to our planet and to our nature. I mean, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we were a part of nature. Now we moved to cities, we live in our apartments, we order pizza to the door and we watch Netflix. And we have the entire world in our smartphone. We kind of lost the connection. It's about, and I think that's what most great nature photography and film, what we do, and all the other great nature photographers out there are trying to do, is to shorten the distance to nature that many people have now. Because we used to be a part of it, and now for many, nature is something that we watch on television or plan a vacation to once a year. We don't have the connection to nature that I think is important.
Yeah, it's crucial. I think people got a slap in the face during this Corona pandemic. And I think
I hope so.
We forever thought that we are the rulers of all, but trees are more important than us. Bees are more important than us. Most of living things around us are crucial for our survival. And, we, when you see even like a break in the whole availability of food, like you go in like a month and a half ago, you would go to supermarkets and there's nothing, right? And people are just trying to grab every little last thing. And then you realize, I don't have food. I don't know how to hunt. I don't know how to grow my own food. I'm so reliable. I'm relying on all these other people that know how to do these things and that can provide it for me.
Yeah.
That if that ever breaks, I'm pretty much, you're fending for yourself. And we forgot that. And that's good because, that allowed us to develop the world to what it is right now. But I think it's good to remember that sometimes they're like, hey, we're really, really relying on other people and other industries and people that know how to provide food for us and electricity and Wi-Fi and all these different things that we don't know how to do. So
absolutely,
I think it's a little humbling.
Absolutely. And now we have this huge crisis with the coronavirus. And the next big thing could very well be climate change. A similar scenario where we're all just fucked, basically. And the problem then is that, working out and solving the problem of climate change is not a matter of months to find a vaccine, because these are slow process. It's a slow process, the climate. So if we don't act way before we come into a really catastrophic scenario, then we are fucked.
There's no Band-Aid for it.
No, there isn't.
So let's go back to polar bears a little bit. I'm always, the photos that you and Melissa take, or is it, I don't know if it's mainly Melissa, but the photos that you guys post, it always looks so intimate, I would say, and like personal. But you guys shoot from like a good distance. Like, I don't know how far away you shoot, but it has to be, a good distance. How do you create that? Or is that like the purpose of it? Or like, how do you create that intimate feeling when you're shooting from like, I don't know, 200-300 meters away?
Well, we try to spend time with these animals. You can go out there and do drive-bys and, see a polar bear coming up to you, looking at you, then it goes away. Then you have a beautiful photo of it. But for us, it's more a process of time and coming to an area and be able to spend more time with individual bears. Because then when you actually get the animal to relax and you are able to follow it to see its behavior, and it shares its life with you, what it's doing, that is what we want to document. And for us, what's between the photographs is perhaps even more important than the photographs themselves, or at least just as important. We're trying to find a connection to these animals, the animals that we document. I don't have a really good answer to why perhaps some photographs, show that, but we do try to find the connection in ourselves to these specific individuals, and hopefully that shows in the photos. And as for distance, the distance to the bears, it's very. Sometimes it's very far away. Sometimes it's a bit closer. So the distance, it's the distance in meters. It's not so important to us. As long as we're close enough to get good photos with our tele lenses, it's fine. And keeping a safe distance is of course also important when it comes to polar bears.
Because it's aware of you. It knows, like, it can smell, I think, I remember the number, either 4 or 40 kilometers away, it can smell like...
something. A few miles.
Something like that.
Yeah.
A few miles.
Absolutely.
So it obviously knows you're there, and it's cognizant that you're in the vicinity.
No, it's impossible to hide from a polar bear. It will know that you are there way before you see it.
Yeah.
And also it's a world of ice and snow. There's very little smell. So when you are there and you put up a camp or stay in a cabin, stay for a little while. You have, and you cook food, you sweat, you don't shower for a week, and you go to the toilet and so on. This place becomes like a magnet for polar bears. They can smell their way from miles away. So yes, they are always, they're aware of you. Of course they are.
Are there polar bears that you've, like year after year you come in and you already like maybe name them or them, or is it new ones each year?
It's a few occasions we've seen bears that I think could have been the same bear as the year before. It's difficult. Over a season, if during a winter, we can kind of sometimes follow a specific polar bear. But coming back a year later and hoping to see the same individual, that's very difficult. Because they travel, they move all the time. Huge distances, these bears.
They can swim like for days, right? I think there's a story I heard where those polar bears swam for like 3 days.
Even longer. Actually, it's in our book. I don't have the number in my head now, but I think it's longer, like 7 days or something.
Wow.
They're amazing swimmers, of course. But there's a limit to that also, and that's, they only swim when they're actually trying to get to ice. So swimming, it's not like they want to swim for a few days. For example, you had, I think it was a year and a half ago or so. The thing is that pregnant female polar bears, they need to go on land to give birth. And they go, they build a den. Polar bears don't go into dens like brown bears do, but only when they give birth. So a female polar bear about to give birth, she goes up on land in October, November and builds a den under the snow, a little cave where she stays throughout winter to give birth and nurture new life. And then she comes out in March, April with the little cubs. And that means that the bears, because many bears like to follow the North Pole pack ice as it moves through the seasons. And it means basically that the polar bear needs the ice, of course, for its life, because that's where it finds its food, seals. But it also needs access to land. So as the pack ice recedes north and melts, it also in some areas goes further and further away from land. So the distance between land and ice increases. But in October, November, when a polar bear is about to give birth, she needs access to land. So there was an example a year and a half ago about a bear who was on the ice, and she swam for, I think it was 5 days, 5 straight days. She swam to land to go up on a hill and build her den to give birth. And that's not a great situation for her, because when she's been swimming for 5 days, not eating, she's pretty worn out and not in great condition when she goes up on land to build this den and then stay there for 4 or 5 months without eating and giving birth. So that's not very good. And the next thing when it comes to swimming is that when they come out with the newborn cubs in March, April, they need immediate access to ice, because these small cubs, they cannot swim. They don't survive. They don't have the fat layer to survive in the cold water. So they die if there is no ice.
Mm-hmm. How close have you ever had like a really close encounter with the polar bear?
I've had a bunch, but mostly, or I would say only.
Or
sorry,
some scary, some that you really got scared, or
Scared. Yeah, scared. You shouldn't get scared when you face the polar bears close up because they feel it. They're like dogs.
Yeah.
So leave the being scared part to afterwards. But yeah, like I said before, when we have this camp or we stay in a cabin, we become like a magnet for bears. So most, or if not all, really close encounters and sort of scary situations have been around the cabin or the camp, where you can, it happens that you open the door in the morning and he's right there. You can touch him. That has happened a few times. Then you hit him gently in the head and hope that he goes away.
That he doesn't hit you back.
No, and actually, even the very first night out there, my first night on my first winter expedition, it was on northern Spitsbergen, and at that time I hadn't seen a polar bear closer than, I don't know, a mile away from a ship. Mm-hmm. So I had been driving for hours and hours, 15 hours, I think, from the village, over glaciers, over fjord ice and mountains. 15 hours, and I came to northern Spitsbergen, and I was so tired, and came to one of these old trapper cabins built by a polar bear hunter 100 years ago. So I was tired, I was cold, I went inside, closed and secured the door and the little window on the inside, and laid down in the top bed of the bunk bed to sleep. And the cabin was very small, the ceiling was low, and laying on this top bed was like laying in a coffin almost. And I had like a couple of inches maybe above my face to the ceiling. So I fell asleep, but I woke up pretty quickly because the ceiling was hitting my face. And on top of me was a polar bear jumping on the roof. With all his power, trying to crush this thin roof like it was ice, and I was a little seal pup or something. So yeah, and that was the first one.
That was the first one.
Yeah, and there have been many. Another time was on an island. That was actually this. We talked about how cold it was in this expedition when it was like 45 minus 50 Celsius for a long time. Wow. I went there with a helicopter, and I don't know what was carrying stuff into the cabin. Had made camp in an old trapper cabin. And only, I think, an hour after the helicopter had left, the first bear approached from the ice. And it got closer and closer, and I started making noise. And first you use like casseroles and kitchen things, like a pan. Yeah. And you make noise. That's the best way. I did that, but he continued coming closer. He didn't stop, so I fired some warning shots with a rifle. No reaction. Still, heading straight towards me. So then I took the flare gun. That's also a very good thing to have. The flare gun is like, this thing that you use if there's a mayday on a boat. Yeah. It's like a firework. So I shot it on the ground, on the ice, right in front of him. And it's like a little bomb that explodes when it lands. And it scares the shit out of anyone. And 99 out of 100 bears would just run. So I rarely have to use this. But this thing exploded right next to him. And then he stopped just briefly, and he looked at it. And then he looked at me, stared me straight in the eye, and looked at this gunpowder on the ice next to him. And then he ate the gunpowder. And then he looked at me again and continued walking straight towards me.
Jesus.
Yeah. That was a special one. Well, continue making noise. Actually started throwing things at him. And thankfully I was in a cabin. I could close the door. So it was like an hour of more noise and more flare gun shots. And, I was tired. He got tired. And finally, he retreated out on the ice. I don't know, 100, 200 yards maybe. Lay down to sleep. And the next morning, he was gone. But then this bear, I was there for a few weeks. And the last night, was waiting for a helicopter to pick me up the next morning. And on the final night, it was like securing the cabin and closing up. I saw a silhouette far out on the ice. And I just knew that it was the same bear again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Somehow I just felt it. So then we did the same kind of song and dance for, I don't know, it felt like 2 hours, but maybe it was 30 minutes with flare gun shots and noise. And he just didn't want to back off. But then finally, again, he laid down, I don't know, 200-300 yards out. He gave up and lay down. And it was so cold. It was 45 something minus. And I was so tired. So I secured the door and the window and I went to bed. The wall next to the bed is maybe like an inch thick or so. I lay down, and as I was falling asleep, I heard heavy, slow steps breaking through the snow crust outside. And they got closer, and then finally I heard like a big bounce as he laid down right next to me, maybe a foot away or so, on the other side of the wall. So the last night we slept side by side, basically.
Almost cuddling.
Yeah, almost cuddling. And the next morning he was gone. So
was he just really hungry? Because you're saying that's not like typical polar bear behavior. Like,
no,
what made him active?
Yeah, the thing is that polar bears, they're all different. Like us humans, they're individuals. Some are shy, some are aggressive, some are playful. And like with humans, one or two will be a psychopath. So
yeah.
There are psycho bears also. And I think maybe he was one of those. But most bears are perfectly fine, well behaved, and you can work with them in a safe way. But the problem, of course, is around the camp, because these smells from the camp of food and human flesh and so on can trigger behaviors that you don't really want. So you need to be careful there.
Yeah. We tend to think of species as a unit, right? Like, lions behave X, and polar bears behave Y, and cats and dogs behave. But they're, like you said, they're kind of like us. They have their own unique personalities. One's lazy, one's active. Like, I can see this with dogs, obviously. I've had dogs my whole life, and they're all so different from each other. And there's no real reason why wild animals would be any different.
No,
It's
exactly.
one of those things you don't really think about. It's weird, yeah.
No, but that's how it is. They do have some similarities, of course. But
like humans.
Yes, exactly. But for the most part, they're very different, and and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell the story of the polar bear as a species, but also of the different personalities that we encounter and get to know. Because I think that's also important to show who they are as a species and as individuals.
Do you think Svalbard is one of the best places to see polar bears?
Yeah, I would think so. It's a matter of if you're talking about coming there as a guest or a tourist or so. Of course, it's a question of budget also. It is expensive to travel around. Svalbard is a good place. Also, you have Canada, of course. Churchill.
Yeah, Manitoba, right?
Manitoba, exactly. But I think it's important to, of course, to do it in a responsible way also. But I do think that most operators up there, both on Svalbard and in Manitoba, are very responsible. It's about not disturbing also. Polar bears are easily disturbed by noise and humans. So
yeah.
But Svalbard,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And then I would say the best way, if you really want to see and experience polar bears, go on a cruise ship, because that's not so disturbing to the bears. Winter time, we do it when we work. Me and Melissa, we go out with snowmobiles, scooters during the winter. And that's one way, but as a without experience and knowledge, you need to go on kind of a guided trip, and then you go out with a big group of people. And then it's, I would say, not possible to see polar bears because you disturb too much. But then going on one of these cruise ships, that's probably the best way, but it's very expensive. Or go to Manitoba. In Canada.
I might have to go there. I might have to go there soon. That's it looks like a lot of fun. They have those like little tanks or like little buses.
They call them
like
tundra buggies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, we've been asked to host a trip there next fall. I think October 21.
Really?
Do like a guided trip on one of those. We see. We haven't really decided yet, but yeah.
Well, we'll keep in touch. If you do, I'll definitely want to join one of those.
Awesome.
That looks, not every day you see a polar bear, so looks like a fun experience.
Yeah.
I mean, unless your name is Fredrik, then I guess you see polar bears all the time. But
No, it's not like that either. You look and you see our book, or you see what we post on social media and so on, and those are the highlights. Between those highlights, there is a lot of time of nothing. A lot of time of great experiences and a wonderful time, but also time without polar bears. And they can be very far. There can be a long distance between the polar bears and a long time between the polar bears also. You can go out there and be out for weeks without seeing polar bears. So that's the thing with these expeditions and the field work, that you can plan it into detail, but you never really know what will happen until you're actually out there. So I know one winter I was out for, I think, 3 months and came home without one single good photograph.
Wow.
And at other times, you can go out for 2-3 days and just experience miracles and magic nonstop. So you never really know. And that's the beauty of it, I think. That you have to kind of let nature guide you and let nature decide. You cannot really direct it.
You mentioned your book.
Yeah.
You mentioned your book. So the English version of the Swedish book that you guys have, Frozen, which won an award, is coming out, I believe, in the U.S. sometime this year or next year.
This year, in September. Sure. It's called, actually, the Swedish book is the Swedish version of the English book. we wrote,
really?
Yeah, the book was made for the English market, first of all, for the US market.
Okay.
So we wrote the book in English. But then we were we won this Swedish World Wildlife Fund Award, Book of the Year, which kind of stressed to make the Swedish edition very quickly. That's why it came out first. But yes, it comes in the US and also in Germany, in English and German, in September, October. The US version comes on September 29th, published by Rizzoli in New York. It is called Polar Tales, and it is a story about all of us told by the polar bear.
Wow, that's awesome.
And it's a big, beautiful book with a lot of amazing photography by Melissa Schäfer.
Who is your partner?
Who is my partner? Yes.
Well, that's awesome, man. So I guess final question from me. And by the way, guys, make sure you do pick that up once it's out. But as far as what do you think, with obviously climate change and public opinion kind of always changing, and with COVID-19 happening now, and we don't know really how people are going to be acting on the other end. I guess it depends on many different variables like economics and what's going to happen with this virus, social distancing, etc. But are people going to be more accepting of the fact and be better stewards of this earth, or are people going to go back to their old ways and become even worse and I don't know, use up more resources, etc. So it's difficult to see. And obviously our actions and daily habits have a big impact on animals and nature. So with all that said and all those unknowns, what do you think is the future of polar bears?
The future is bright. I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. And I would like to maybe most of all look at the young generation, the new generation coming with Greta Thunberg, for example. They will be unstoppable, and they will turn this ship from its very sad direction. I'm an optimist. We're going to turn this around. And for the older people who don't want to, they're going to be forced by Greta Thunberg, and the young people, they will not take no for an answer.
I like that.
So, yeah.
I like that. All right, man. So our time is up for the day. I want to really thank you for coming, and then taking the time and talking to us about book, about polar bears. I know you're in Sweden right now, so it's fun to connect with someone from so far away. Still have so much in common and share a common, love of nature and animals. So I really appreciate all of it. And
thank you.
Can people, yeah, man.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great. It's been awesome.
People can find you on Instagram and on your website, correct?
Yeah. Website is themotherbear.com. Themotherbear.com.
And you can find both him and Melissa on Instagram, where you'll see unbelievable pictures of polar bears, funny pictures of polar bears, sad pictures of polar bears, and everything in between.
Yeah.
And all right, man. Yeah. Thanks again for coming on. It's been fun.
Thank you.